Empires fall for a combination of reasons, never for just one reason. Usually, this is a combination of internal problems and external threats. They are usually affected first by internal chaos and upheaval, then attacked because of their weakness and captured. Though sometimes it can be through some other ways around, or just through one of these ways. In Persia, the empire fell because the government lost some of its power over its outer satrapies, and some conquered places revolted. This forced the government to raise taxes to deal with the revolts. The conquered territories revolted more often, so they had to raise taxes even more. Also, even when they weren't having rebellions, they hoarded gold and silver to deal with future insurrections, which took even more money out of the economy, resulting in a lack of gold and silver to be used by peasants for business. In doing this, the government wasn't getting enough taxes, so they had to raise the price again. This cycle continued until Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire. Had there not been internal chaos, Alexander may not have been able to conquer it. External pressure could also have been from having trade denied by outside states, being attacked by an outside state as Persia was, or attacked by less organized groups of people that travel and raid in bands. Internal pressure can be from lack of control of outside provinces or rebellions, creation of ill will between citizens and government, inflation, and lack of clear successor when empire dies. The Roman Empire. The Roman Empire started its decline when the empire eventually grew so big that the government didn't have the ability to work effectively. To solve this problem, Emperor Diocletian split the emperor into two empires, the Eastern Empire and the Western Empire. Although this solution was effective in resolving the problem temporarily, it eventually resulted in effects that culminated in a period of change for the Roman Empire. The Eastern Empire had an immediate advantage over the Western Empire. Most of the wealth was in the eastern region, while there were more barbarian tribes along the borders of the Western Empire. Also, because the empires were split, they eventually became more and more independent, and so they essentially became two separate empires, although they were both still referred to as Roman. The Western Empire began declining after the split when barbarians advanced along the border. Since there wasn't a lot of wealth in the Western Empire, and because it would take a lot of money, the Eastern Empire wasn't very willing to help. Another prevalent problem was that of trade. Often West would pay gold and silver for silk and spices from East Asia. This was wasting the things that made their empire run for consumables. To deal with this, the West created more money. This led to inflation, which in turn caused the economy to weaken even more. Inflation then destroyed the economy since everything cost more. Then people began to demand higher salaries and more money. Finally, the emperor pays them and then needs more money. This cycle keeps continuing. Some scholars argue that the Roman Empire declined and fell because of how diminished the Western Roman Empire became. There was significant loss of infrastructure, Roman institutions, and trade. Most of the Western Empire became ruled by barbarians, and it was not always recognizably Roman. These reasons lead some historians to believe that the empire declined over a period of time and eventually fell. However, others think that even though all of these negative things happened to the Roman Empire, there were still many positive changes and growth that after this period of time, the Roman Empire could be considered to be transformed. For example, the Christian church flourished during this period. Also, the lifestyle of most people did not change much, and they still described themselves as Roman. Because of this, some people think that the Roman Empire may actually have transformed instead of declining and falling. Many scholars have argued that the Roman Empire fell when the Western Roman Empire was attacked by barbarians in 410 or again in 478. These were important events in Roman history, but there is more to the story than that. Rome was not destroyed by one attacking force of foreign barbarians. Both the attack in 410 and the attack in 478 were made by citizens of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire had allowed groups of barbarians to join the army, and when they attacked the government, it was not because they hated the Romans. Instead, they felt that their treatment had been unfair, and they were revolting just like any other long-term members of the empire would have. They did not take over Rome and rule it as their own empire, but instead they secured the rights that they believed they were entitled to and left the original government in place. They entered the Roman Empire because it needed more soldiers to fight off other barbarians. This process was slow at first, but eventually almost the whole Roman military was barbarian. The economy was also in trouble because though they were constantly at war, they never conquered more land and thus got no new money coming in. The Roman Empire had become dependent on slaves and loot from conquered territories, so when they were no longer conquering, they built up debt. The western part of the empire was eventually split into several pieces that were ruled by people that had military forces in the region, the barbarians, thanks to the barbarization of the military. Throughout this time, there was a definite shift between the strong, thriving state that Rome was in its glory to what the region had become. Some of the biggest changes were the decline of cities and trade. There was too much fighting for the merchants to be safe, and as the roads were used less and less, they fell into disrepair. Because there were no merchants or Roman offices in towns, people began to go back to the countryside to farm because they could no longer sell to merchants or Roman soldiers to make a living. Even if the Western Roman Empire had declined so much that it might not be considered Roman anymore, there was still the Eastern Roman Empire. After splitting away from the West, it became even more prosperous than it had been before. Today it is called the Byzantine Empire, but at the time it was still known as the Roman Empire. It continued to grow in power and influence until 1204 during the Fourth Crusade, when the capital, Constantinople, was sacked. The Byzantines managed to drive the invaders out in 1261. Then, the severely weakened empire struggled along until 1453, when it was attacked by the Ottoman Empire and fell, marking the end of the Roman Empire. To conclude, the Roman Empire became both declined and transformed. The Western Roman Empire underwent a series of catastrophes that ultimately led to the whole portion of the empire collapsing due to a disorganized system of barbarian government and institutions that were unrecognizable as Roman. However, the Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire, survived the crisis that led to the downfall of the western part of the empire, and actually thrived for another millennium, with recognizably Roman institutions and even citizens that called themselves Rome. This shows that the Roman Empire was a victim of breakdown, but there was still a thriving empire, until 1453, when the West had faded out of existence and the East fell to the Ottoman Empire.